right. So let's jump into it. So just last time we talked, it was interesting. I was going over it again today. So last time we were talking all about how you guys, it hadn't been picked up for season 3 yet, but you were starting to throw ideas around. It was, I think, like July last year, based off of you're throwing ideas around. Well, what can they do this next season, and how can we deal with the pandemic and everything? And then you were telling me about you were hearing stories coming out of firehouses about all of them having to quarantine and all the stories that were coming out of those. And so, what I want to know is, did you guys incorporate any of those stories into this season from what they were doing?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. When we were kind of putting the stories together, we were a little bit hamstrung by the fact that COVID was shutting everyone down and that it made it kind of difficult to shoot. But then when we started shooting this quarantine, the first episode we do is this quarantine episode. And like you said, it's based on some stories that we got from real firefighters. It became a really kind of like, on point kind of episode. And we were able to use things like, in that episode, like, people delivering lasagnas to the firefighters who were trapped in their quarantine, or, different stories of them being stuck in this world. It became, pretty useful to put into the show.
Yeah, I mean, the important thing for us was just nobody wants to be reminded of any of that stuff. So it was like, what's the comedic twist that we're going to put on it? We want to address it because firefighters actually, went through it. But what was the comedic twist? And so for us, our first episode of season 3 is the quarantine episode, but we're suffering from the simian flu.
Right.
And the simian flu, if you'll recall, is the thing that sets off Planet of the Apes. So, we did a bunch of the sort of tropes from the pandemic, people baking bread and picking up hobbies and, quickly dropping those hobbies and sinking into, a funk. But the episode, it turned out great.
Right. And what I love about it is the fact that, a lot of, that was the kind of thing everyone was questioning, how are these shows going to deal with it? And I love that you guys went the opposite way. Didn't mention COVID, didn't mention the pandemic itself. And I love that you guys were able to comment on it without ever actually commenting on it.
Right. You get the point,
Right,
you get the
of course.
Yeah.
Although the irony was that, like, for instance, one of the jokes up top at the beginning of the episode is that we've all been sharing a fork off the same piece of quiche. We pass it around. We're like, oh yeah, it's a good quiche. And we're passing it around. And then, Terry comes in with the news, hey, you were exposed to the simian flu. Have you been, close to each other, whatever? And we're like, oh, we were eating off the same fork. The reality of it, when we shot that, because of COVID protocols, we literally, everyone had their own fork, and you'd have to have a person take a bite and eat it and then pass it off camera. And then, the prop guys would come in and with gloves and double shields and take that fork away. And then, like sterilize that. And somebody else would come in with a fresh fork and hand it to the next actor who would take it from off camera. So,
I'm surprised they didn't make you do like 5 different quiches. I'm surprised they let you all share the same dish.
No, we did different quiches.
Yeah, they did.
Did you really?
Yeah, they swap out a quiche.
That's
It's
crazy.
probably the most time-consuming thing we did all season was that stupid.
It was the first thing we shot.
Yeah.
I love that. And so, yeah, I mean, that kind of segues into this. So what was with a show that's all, confined to kind of one space and one area and everyone is in such close quarters, did it change how you had to write this season or how you had to film it at all? Like, what were some of the changes in, doing season 3 that look exactly like the first 2, but were there any changes that you guys had to make because of it? Any concessions?
Yeah, I mean, we couldn't really go out into the real world too much. We couldn't go out in location. We couldn't shoot scenes with extras. And so, that was something we just had to keep in mind. Like, maybe we should, our set is very controlled, and that's how we can, that's how we were able to do the safest production possible. So that I think, there's less times when we're kind of going out on these calls and dealing with, rooms full of people that we don't know. And that, I think that forced us to be a little more creative. Sometimes when you're pushed into a corner, you come out of it by coming up with jokes, and which we've certainly known from the beginning of our careers. When you have like budgetary constraints, you actually come up with more jokes. So instead of doing a big shootout like at the end of Super Troopers, it's guys coming out of a police car with a sex doll on the roof to create a diversion because we don't have the money for bullets and blanks and things like that. So I don't know. I think it's the best season we've had, and I think part of it was because of these constraints.
It definitely forces us to do certain things a certain way. I mean, there's no question that we had to focus more on character, I think, because it's more about us in the station interacting with each other and learning about each other, as opposed to these kind of big out in the world set pieces. And that's a little bit more of a challenge to write that kind of dialogue and those kind of jokes. And you end up knowing the characters better, which I think is what makes the season so good.
Right. Like, I think it was the second episode, there was someone that was over the phone. I think it was Murph, I think that character's name. I feel like if it wasn't COVID, they would have been in the room as well. I feel it was something like that as well. You're
exactly right. I mean, that guy would have showed up on the set, and we would have shot with that person, Yeah, no, there are several times you go through the season, it's like, there's an episode, we have a Thanksgiving episode where we, prepare to go to march in the Thanksgiving Day parade. And if we were not in COVID protocol, we would probably try to shoot a parade. But in these circumstances, we came with a reason why we couldn't make it to the parade. So, it just changes the episode.
That's kind of cool. I mean, you were talking about, it kind of brings on this creativity to where, I kind of like the idea of showing someone, anyone can show what it actually is, but I like the idea of thinking out of the box. Okay, why can't they go do this? So you're creating obstacles. I like that.
and that obstacle, it was that the truck broke down, the engine broke down, and we couldn't make it to the parade. And then it just sends us off on a different adventure. And it was great. It's like those things spark a lot of ideas. When you're given obstacles. I think that's like screenwriting 101. Put an obstacle in your character's way, and then it's like, conflict.
Right, absolutely. And so last time we talked, you were talking about the editing for season 2 and how you had to do it over Zoom and how it was kind of uncomfortable to have to edit something over Zoom. But I'm sure by, season 3, was it a lot easier, having already been through season 2? Did it make producing season 3 over Zoom calls and stuff like that, did that make it even easier because you had already been through it?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, the good thing is that since the last time we talked, the technology has gotten a lot better. It's that, the whole industry has had to do it this way now. And so there's a lot of focus on how technologically can you make that happen in a better way. And so, back in the second season, everyone was struggling with, technological setbacks that don't exist anymore, which was very noticeable, I think, when we ended up getting into our post here on season 3. It felt a little bit more well-oiled. Now there's still issues, and there's still, you run into tech issues, and you still miss that idea.
Speak for yourself, Heffernan. This is so many times this season. I'm like, is your system crashed? And he's like, no, it's great. Why? And I'm like, ours has crashed 11 times.
Mm-hmm. And we're not playing against each other. We're playing with each other. So when your system crashes, my system crashes. You know what I'm saying?
You just don't know it.
Yeah.
That's right. The show crashed. It half crashed.
But I think there's a little something about, I don't know how much it's going to go back to the old ways. It's like the technology's gotten so good, and Lemmy and I laugh about it all the time. It's like, I'm sitting in my house, my editor is sitting in Silver Lake or whatever, and we never have to drive anywhere. It makes it very easy to just get your work done.
And also you don't waste as much time. You don't bullshit. We do a lot of bullshitting when we're in person with the editors, like Nerf gun fights and things like that. And not anymore. You get on, there's no small talk, or like, let's get to work.
That sounds a little tragic.
I like it. I like it.
You kind of just, you focus on what you're working on. It's not so many.
You do, yeah. I mean, when you're in the office, in the edit room, you'll go to the kitchen and grab a bite to eat, and someone's there, and you shoot the shit for 20 minutes, and then whatever. Here it's like you sit down, you turn it on, you get your work done, and you turn it off. You know.
But
And
that
that's-
does beg. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's a little sterile at times, but you know, it's efficiency wise, it's pretty good.
That does beg the question because the show is so much about distractions. And were there any distractions that were kind of came out of those times? And did it get harder to come up with pranks and ideas that you couldn't, because now you couldn't base them as much on real life because, you know, everyone's been quarantined?
Yeah.
You know, I actually think that like do you mean I just got confused. Do you mean in the show or in real life?
So what I was saying is, so because, you know, I imagine the show has so many distractions and stuff, I imagine some things are, you know, are born out of real life distractions of working on the show together the first 2 seasons as far as the writing process. So like, let's say like you pulled a prank on Kevin or something, you're like, oh, we could write that in, something like
Right.
that. Once, you know, you have to write over Zoom and everything, does it get challenging to come up with new pranks because you don't have anything to mirror it off of, maybe?
I think, you know, I mean, truthfully, not really, because like as the season, you know, after the first season aired, the whole time it was going on, we had firefighters giving us stories, a lot of them about the pranks that they do. And so, you know, when we went into season 2, we had a big creative list with a ton of stuff left over, but also a lot of stuff added onto that list, more stuff added onto that list than in the previous season. When we started season 3, we had so much stuff, you know, still stuff we couldn't use because there was just too much of it. And it's, you know, if we get a season 4, it's the same thing. Our list keeps growing. So, you know, I think that's the nice thing about this world. And, you know, that people don't know about firefighters. There's so many different aspects of it. Like there are these, you know, obviously they you know, troubleshoot and, you know, they put out fires and they also, you know, help around the community, but there's also a lot of shenanigans that happen in the station, and it's kind of endless, and the list grows. So thankfully we didn't have that problem.
Are you guys already thinking about what season 4 could look like?
Yeah, I mean, we have a huge list of ideas again that, like Lemmy said, they just keep coming in. And, you know, also, you know, going back to what you said earlier, you know, we did end up spending, you know, 4 months together as a cast and crew in a confined space. And everyone was coming out of the pandemic, so everyone was excited for human contact. And there was a lot of funny shit that went on. And there was a lot of stuff, you know, there's a lot of things that generated ideas, you know, like you said, like you're just having a conversation of what you like to eat or whatever. And then you're talking to Marcus or Hassie or whatever. And then all of a sudden that becomes an idea. And, you know, Lemmy writes it down. And now we have a huge, you know, wealth of material that we're going to try to dig into for season 4, which is great.
It's funny. I think this is our most emotional season yet. And a lot of that, you know, I don't know if it was in the writing of it or if it was in the performing of it, but like, I remember the first day we showed up on set for season 3, like, you know, truly while we had our wrap party for season 2, and probably a week later, the pandemic shut everything down. And this was, you know, we started shooting last Thanksgiving. So this was like, we were one of the first productions back up, and it was the big experiment, you know, like, okay, we've got COVID protocols and there's a budget for COVID, and the actors are everybody's getting tested, you know, every day. And, but for a lot of people, it was like, it was their first time working in, you know, 8 months or something like that. And I remember seeing Gabe and Eugene, who play Ike and Andy, for the first time. And we hadn't seen each other live also because we'd been shut down. And we saw each other and we all got randomly emotional. We were like, you know, hey, good to see you guys. It's going to be great season. You know, it was like, it was a return to some sort of normalcy. And I think that has bled into the season. Like, we did a lot of emotional takes. But
well,
faux motion, not real tears ever.
Faux motion. I like that.
Yeah.
I like it. So, last couple things. So, what were some of your favorite pranks that you guys got to do in season 3?
There's a lot of good stuff. I mean, you know, it wasn't so much a prank, but one thing that was pretty fun was that we wrote this pickleball episode, and which, you know, I don't know much about pickleball, but now I've learned that's, you know, pretty popular sport. And But anyway, we needed a lot of pickleball players for this tournament in the show, and so we broke the crew down into pickleball teams. And so a lot of the members of the crew got to play on camera, got to play pickleball, which was really fun because you saw a different side of a lot of the people that you work every day with. And that was a pretty fun on-set experience where everyone had just had a blast playing pickleball for a couple of days.
Yeah, we one prank I remember that I really enjoy. Some of these things are so benign. Was never-ending dishes. Like in the second episode when Lucy's about to, come out of her probie period, the guys start pranking her. That's a very prank-heavy episode. But there's one, never-ending dishes, which is so stupid, and it's a Firehouse staple where you've got the probie who's doing dishes, and like they wash the dishes and they rinse the dishes and hand it to the person who puts it in the dishwasher, but that same person also takes one out and hands it around to the person who's going to hand the dirty dish to the person washing the dishes again. And so literally the dishes just keep coming around. The probie just keeps washing the dishes and handing them off and taking another one, washing the dishes and handing them off. And I don't know. It doesn't sound funny as I describe it, but it's just a silly, stupid little firefighter prank.
I like how these things become staples, like you mentioned. Like I like that, like that just the idea of that got passed around from Firehouse to Firehouse, and then all of a sudden all of them were doing it.
Sure. The videos get passed around.
Oh yeah, we would watch different videos of different stations, never-ending dish pranks to get good camera angles. We're like, it works really well from back here. Like this is a nice angle to see that plate going behind their back.
I like that. And so what do you think, the last two questions. So what do you think is the secret to pulling off a good workplace comedy? Like, was that a discussion that you guys had early on? And like, what do you think, what is the secret recipe for pulling that off?
I think part of it's chemistry. I think really it is character chemistry, like to have a good, solid, base of characters who, in our circumstances, we've dealt with it all the time in our career from Super Troopers and Beer Fest and the movies that we made, is to have a good chemistry amongst the people where you buy into the fact that they're friends and they have this world of friends and it makes you want to be a part of that world of friends. To me, I think that's like the big thing about the workplace comedy is to make you feel like you want to be there,
Yeah, it's funny. It's like there's two kind of staples of TV that we would always get asked when Kevin and I were pitching TV shows. It's about the characters, how they interact with each other, and it's like in any given situation, you might know what somebody's going to say. You've got your dumb guy, and you've got your authoritarian, and you've got your wise ass, and how do they interact? And the other one is the world. People always say to us like, well, what's the world? What's the world? What's fun about this world? And the firefighter world is such a great world because these people are heroic. They're good at their jobs and they do something that is incredibly noble. And they can put their lives on the line, but they can also, then they can go to a school and show little kids the fire engine, or they can, they sometimes deal with people who've fallen and can't get up. And sometimes they've got ridiculous things like people getting stuck and things. And then they also have downtime at home or back at the station where they live with each other. And I don't know how many jobs are like that, where you actually do your stuff out in the field, but then you live with each other. So it's like your roommates and you've got that dynamic. And, for us, it's just been a goldmine of material.
Right. I mean, it seems like it's that kind of thing where you guys would never be able to run out of stories for something like this. Like the show's set up in such a way where it's just, it's endless. Like, it could just keep going as long as you guys are able to keep making it.
Yeah.
Like never-ending dishes.
Exactly.
There's like 3 million firefighters in America, and every one of them's got 10 funny prank ideas. So we're never going to run out.
That's right.
Well, I mean, and especially, so I'm sure you're at a place now. I mean, in the first few years, I'm sure, you'd meet people, you'd meet firefighters. They'd be like, oh, I've got this idea. Now, you're not going out there meeting as many people. Have they all kind of come in as tweets now? Have you been getting a lot more tweets with ideas than last year?
Yeah, people tweet at us, and you know, sometimes, I mean, like anything, like any buddy telling you a joke, some are good and some are bad.
But firefighters will stop. You'll run into people, and firefighters will say, stop, say, hey, I got this great story. And some of them are great, some of them are not so great, but some of them are really great. That's awesome. I imagine there'll be more of that. The more people watch the show.
Absolutely, I can't wait to see it. And so we're gonna end on this. Last time we talked, I asked you for an update on Super Troopers 3. Now I'm gonna ask again how things are looking. Are we any closer? Last year, you guys were just in the middle of working on the script. So is that still kind of the same place?
Yeah, well, we got a couple of scripts in the works now, and we're hoping to shoot something within the next year. We just have to figure out what window we have, to shoot between seasons if we get a season 4. But Super Troopers 3 is written. There's a draft of it, and we're just looking for the time for us all to sit down together and get the next draft. But the the studio is Searchlight, and so they're excited about it, and the deal is made. So whenever we can find that slot, we're going to make it.
I can't wait to see it. And, I can't wait to see, you mentioned that's just one of the scripts. I can't wait to see, what some of the other stuff is eventually.
It's good. It's good.
Is it?
It is.
I'm sure nothing you guys can reveal just yet.
Not yet.
Not yet, but soon.
I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see those, and I can't wait to maybe one day we get to all see Podfest.
Yes. Also, yes.
You would like that. We would like that.
Way to stay very guarded about it.
We're incredibly guarded about it.
I'm sure. I imagine I'm not.
I
can't imagine I'm the first person to ever bring up either of those things. I imagine I'm like the 101st, maybe.
Well,
higher.
Yeah. But you're the first person to bring it up while we have things that we want to talk about.
Well, I'm sorry to kind of diverge onto that, but it's all right. So the last thing is there anything you guys can share that you're hoping people can take away from Tacoma FD, and then maybe is there anything you can share that maybe you want to do next season? Is there anything you can, an idea or something?
An idea for next season?
Yeah. Anything at all?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think one thing I would share with people about this season is that, it's kind of fun because now there are people who are out there watching the show, and it becomes easier to get people to come do the show with you. So this season 3 has some great, funny people that came in to work with us and that do amazing cameos. And we had Whitney Cummings come in, and Dave Keckner, and Joey Pants joined us again. We have Flula Borg and Brett Ernst, and we have a former UFC heavyweight champion of the world, a guy named Stipe Miocic.
Kev, what I have been told is that it's kind of like the president. Like once they're a champ, you always call them champ.
Okay. The champ, but he's not the current champ, right?
He's not the current champ, but he's the champion. He's considered the greatest heavyweight champion of all time in UFC.
And he comes on and he beats some of us up this season, so it's good.
Because he's a firefighter. He's a firefighter in real life.
Yeah. And so we have a great kind of cast of guest stars coming in this season that everyone can see. And then I'm sure that's the great thing about season 4 is that the more people watch it, the more you can get people to come do the show with you. But in terms of season 4, I don't know. We haven't even started talking about it yet. I mean, there's a big cliffhanger at the end of this season, so we have to figure out how to get back into the next season.
Yeah, the cliffhanger this season, Andrew, is savory. That's all I'll say.
I can't wait to see it. I'm on the edge of my seat waiting to see what you guys come up with. All right. Well, listen, it's been great getting to talk to you guys again. Thank you so much for doing this.